so what's up everybody? Welcome to the Rebel Rave. I am Rob.
I'm Dave.
And we just watched The Last Jedi.
We're going to give you a quick non-spoiler initial thoughts and reactions, and then we're going to get into a spoiler-filled review.
Yes, don't worry, we're going to let you know when to click away, so if you haven't seen the movie yet, it's still safe to watch.
Spoilers will start at this timestamp.
So, let's get into initial first reactions, first thoughts.
Non-spoiler thoughts.
Non-spoiler. Okay, Dave, I want to know, without giving any spoilers, what are your first thoughts? Go.
Rob, you brought up that leaving this movie was a lot different than leaving, let's say, Rogue One, where we were like super pumped. It was very different from leaving The Force Awakens too. This movie did exactly what I wanted it to, in that it broke new ground. It had no reservations in doing that. It wasn't afraid to break the Star Wars mold. And I so appreciate that, because that's what I think we need for the saga to remain new and fresh and sort of invigorated.
Yeah.
What did you think, Rob?
Agreed. I think there were, like you said, when we left Rogue One, I feel like we left and we were like, wow, what an incredible ending, what an incredible way to segue into A New Hope. And it was like, okay, great. This one, we kind of just looked at each other and we're like, we need a minute to process this because we don't really know how we feel yet. And like Dave said, they were not afraid to take certain turns that we weren't expecting. There were several points in the movie where I was like, no, are they really going to do this? Like, I did not expect that. And there were several times where I turned to Dave and he was literally doing this. And so it definitely it kept you on your toes. Like you weren't really sure what was going to happen next.
Quick final thoughts before we get into the spoilers. Rob, go.
Okay, so I thoroughly enjoyed the movie. I'm not going to in any way say I did not like the movie. I really liked it. I will say there were points in the movie where, I would say there's probably one or two points where I was like, man, this movie's not going to be as good as I thought it was. There were parts where it was actually losing my interest. There was basically like a side story happening with two characters, and I found myself being disappointed, almost annoyed when it was switching to that, because the side story, the main story that was happening had me so interested and so intrigued that I didn't want it to end. So when it would switch to this side story, I was like, oh gosh, back to this. Come on, wrap this up, wrap this up. So it did get interesting. There was one point in the movie where I feel like the entire movie took a turn, and I feel like I sat up in my seat and I did not lose interest from that point to the rest of the movie. And that's when it really started taking some turns that I did not see coming. And overall, I give it, it was great. It was a great movie.
For the most part, Rob, I agree with you. I really enjoyed the movie. However, I did find some of the pacing in especially the first act, to be a little awkward. There was a lot of jumping around between the various plot points and the characters that got split up. But, I mean, on the whole, humor, I thought it could not be everybody's thing, but I personally enjoyed it a lot. Porgs were totally fine. There were not too many porgs. And the entire second half of the movie was spectacular.
Yep.
Absolutely fantastic. What happens in that can be controversial, but I think it was pulled off incredibly well. So my initial reactions and thoughts are, I very much liked the movie. I think I may grow to very much love the movie. I need to see it a few more times, let it digest. But yeah, let's talk about, let's get into it now. So we're gonna go spoilers, full on spoiler review. We're gonna discuss the entire film now.
Here they come.
If you haven't seen it, leave.
You have
right now.
You have 3 seconds to click away. Okay, and 3, 2, 1, spoiler. We're gonna take from little portions of the movie at a time, starting from the very beginning. It starts with this, what I thought was a beautiful space battle. It was awesome, you know, with Poe just jumping right in and just kicking butt.
And that's one thing I loved about this film, is it had a lot of focus on Poe. Based on the trailers, I was really scared that he was going to get sidelined and not have a good arc or story. Yeah. But he got a lot of attention. He got some pretty awesome action, especially in this opening sequence.
He did. He did. It was great. The one thing that I will say that I personally, it kind of annoyed me a little bit, was that I love the humor. There was a good amount of humor in the movie, and I enjoyed it. Right at the beginning of the movie, it started doing this kind of the humor with Poe and Hux, and calling him Hugs, and then going back and forth like he's not being connected, and he was just messing with them. But the thing that I think bothered me was the way that Hux was responding to it, because in The Force Awakens, they portray Hux as just like an evil guy who just wants to annihilate everyone. And you know, remember that scene on Starkiller where like he's just giving his speech and he looks like Adolf Hitler. And then so they now the very first scene we see him in the next movie, he's like being made fun of, and he's like, I don't know,
They played it off for me. I didn't mind it as much. They played it off as they were stalling. Poe needed his booster to charge up. I agree. I think Hux's reactions weren't the best, but I thought Poe's, you know, general hugs and all those, that prodding, I thought that was totally in character for him.
Yeah, it's definitely Poe, which we saw in The Force Awakens with the whole who talks first, do I talk first? Sorry.
The battle as a whole, I thought was great. I thought the bombers were really interesting. That was something we hadn't really seen before. Paige's death, I mean, I saw that coming from a mile away.
It came quick though. I didn't realize it was going to be that quick.
I thought we were going to get to meet her a little bit first.
I'm only basing this on the toys. I haven't read anything about her, but I thought she was going to be more of a... We were going to learn more about Paige. So when she died like that, it surprised me. And
it seemed like the character of Rose could have existed without Paige, her sister, dying. I didn't feel like that there was that much connection there between them. But I thought the whole opening battle was still great. So as soon as they escape from that battle, Finn wakes up, asks where Rey is, and now we finally get to see Rey and Luke Skywalker's first interaction on Ahch-To. And what does Luke do? Chucks the saber.
Okay, now, I don't want to sound negative because I've just said one thing that I didn't like about the first scene, and now I'm going to say something. This really, really annoyed me because the movie, The Force Awakens, ended on this incredible cliffhanger of the lightsaber being extended and Luke having this face of like, who are you, what are you doing here, like, is that my saber? And so I was expecting this giant grandiose, you know, opening first line, he's gonna say something incredible, and it just went straight to humor, and he just chucked the thing, the theater laughed, and he walked away, and I was like, I waited 2 years for that. And so I struggled with that a little bit. I do understand why they had to do that because of Luke's whole idea of, you know, the Jedi needs to end the Force, he's done with it all. So I understand why they went that direction. I will say, if the movie would have started with that, literally starting where The Force Awakens ended, and it would have done that, it would have annoyed me even more. So the fact that they just kind of quickly cut to it and then did that, I guess.
See, again, that didn't bother me that much. What would I have preferred? Yeah, I mean, at the end of Force Awakens, I was like, come on, Luke. Force pull that lightsaber to you, bam, ignite it, end on that. And that's not what we got. Again, the trailer said so many times, this is not gonna go the way you think. And that's something that I love about this film. It just continues to subvert your expectations and go in new ways that you didn't expect it to go.
Yeah.
So the whole thing with Luke being sort of a crotchety old hermit and refusing to train Rey, they got over it pretty quick. You know, once he went over and hung out with R2 and the Falcon, and R2 popped up that hologram of Leia, that was cool.
That was a really nice touch.
He changed his tune pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So we've caught up on the Resistance. We've caught up on Luke and Rey. And then who else do we have left? Kylo Ren, Hux, and Snoke. So Kylo Ren is summoned to Snoke's chambers, and Snoke gives him a pretty lethal verbal whipping.
Yeah, he sure does. I feel like Andy Serkis did an incredible job portraying Snoke. Like, once I actually saw him really acting, and even the very first shot you get of him sitting on his throne, kind of casual, leaning to the side, and his interactions with Kylo, I thought they were unbelievable. They were so cool. And then that moment where Kylo kind of is angered, and he kind of strikes up like he's gonna do something, and Snoke just kind of puts him down, just like that, just a little flash of lightning. I thought at that moment, this guy is so powerful, I cannot wait to see how he's gonna use these powers later in the movie, which...
We'll get to that.
Yes.
Absolutely. Snoke showcased some awesome power right there. Also, when he picked up Hux and slammed him on the floor from probably light years away, that was crazy. That whole exchange is really interesting. It showed how Snoke was either manipulating Kylo or almost didn't even care about him. He really was just using Kylo as Han warned him in The Force Awakens. So Kylo's taking a verbal beating, he gets in his TIE silencer, and he goes to attack the Resistance. And then that leads us to Leia's big moment. The bridge of the Raddus getting blown up, Leia going out into space, and using the Force to Superman back to safety. Rob, what did you think of this?
Okay, well, when I saw Kylo take his thumb off the trigger, I thought, that's exactly what I figured was gonna happen. I'm like, yeah, there's no way Leia's gonna die. There's no way Leia's gonna die right now. And then the two TIE fighters came, they did what they did, and she flew out, and I remember, I was just like, what? Because I was just flashing back to everything I've read that Leia's gonna have a pivotal role in Episode 9. And so I was like, how are they gonna do this? Is she gonna be a Force ghost? What's gonna happen? Now, she shot out, we all assumed she was dead, and then she, like you said, Superman back into the Radis. Now, I wasn't sure how I felt about that at first, because is that a force power to be able to do that? I mean, she hasn't really been trained by the force. Has she?
Well, she's obviously super strong with the Force. She's a Skywalker. I believe in one of the books they talk about how Leia was supposed to be Luke's first student, but decided to focus on politics and what she was already good at instead. So, I mean, think about it. She's in a grave, life-threatening situation. She's moments from death, and she reached out with the Force and was able to will herself back onto the ship. Personally, it really landed for me. I thought it worked really well. I came into this film wanting to see Leia use the Force in some way. Whether it was something super subtle, or whether it was even something for comedic impact, I thought saving herself was really interesting, and also showcases, you know, her strength. She's never had to be saved by the boys, except for Luke maybe breaking her out of that cell, but she's always been able to hold her own, and I love that she saved her own skin in this instance. So, in the midst of Luke training Rey, we get all of these glimpses into this Force connection that Kylo Ren and Rey have, which I thought was super interesting. It's nothing like we've ever seen before in Star Wars. And they played it off like with a lot of cool little touches, like when Rey's in the rain, all of a sudden Kylo's glove has water on it. You know, I thought that was very interesting. What did you think about that?
It threw me off at first. I was kind of trying to catch up on what was happening. Once I realized that it reminded me of Leia and Luke doing that whole Force connection, you know, outside of Cloud City. And
at the end of Empire, yeah.
Which instantly caused my mind to think, oh, they're siblings. This is a sibling thing. You know what I mean? But I told myself, I was like, I don't want to go there. I don't want to assume, because this movie proved one thing. This is not going to go the way you think it is, like they warned us in the trailer. But I thought it was cool.
So this connection between Kylo and Rey continues growing stronger and stronger until it looks like Kylo's like physically manifesting on Octo with Rey. And then Luke figures out what's going on, and then like a dad stepping in to break up the party, hut blows open, and he's like, what is going on here? Rey and Luke have a little bit of a sparring match, which is pretty interesting. And Rey escalates things pretty quickly.
Yeah.
When Luke disarms her, man, she calls that saber to her, and she pulls that saber out on Luke.
Yeah, that was a really cool scene, because you can already see her starting to be a little bit, you know, torn inside. You know, well, was Ben really the victim in all this? Was he really going bad yet, or is Luke really just this crazy man that's now training me and is gonna try to kill me? So that was interesting to watch.
That also led us to Luke's revelation of what really went down between him and Ben the night that his academy was destroyed. When they first started planting the seeds and they showed Luke lightsaberless, trying to look into Ben's mind or trying to decide what to do, he said he was going to confront him. That didn't look right to me. Something looked off about it. And then when Kylo told Rey the story and it looked like Luke was just going straight for the aggression and straight for the kill, something didn't sit right with that for me as well. But when Luke gave his side and said what was actually happening, I thought that was really interesting, and I accepted it for the character. You know, it didn't betray what the character means to me. What did you think of it? Yeah,
so when I first heard Luke's version of it with no lightsaber, I believed it. I wasn't like Dave, where I was like, oh, that doesn't seem right. I believed it, you know, because we know Kylo was bad and he turned, so I figured, okay, that's he had that little dark, he was channeling the dark side of the Force, just like Rey was kind of doing, and so, you know, that's what happened. But then when Kylo said his version of it, where Luke was just trying to kill him, I ended up believing that. I didn't even think that there might be a third version, which is the true version of what happened. So I really like that.
So Rey offers Luke one final chance to come help. He denies it, so she splits, right? She takes off in the Falcon with Chewie, and Luke goes to burn down the Force tree to finish off the Jedi Order once and for all. And who shows up?
Yoda, and the way that he showed up, I loved how it was an out of focus, just corner of his ear kind of showing the background with a little glow. The second I saw it, just something leaped inside of me. I was so excited, and I loved that they didn't do CGI Yoda. They did like puppet Empire Strikes Back Yoda. They didn't do puppet Episode 1 Yoda, because that should never be talked about or shown ever on screen again.
It's terrifying.
Yeah, but I loved it. When I first saw him, I was like, oh, it looks a little different. But once he actually started moving and talking and everything, I was like, I love the Yoda that they chose to go with. And I love how he still had that little senile way about himself, how he was like, poking and jabbing at Luke, like just like they were back on Dagobah. You know, it's young Luke, but this is a Jedi Master Luke, and Yoda doesn't care about that. He's still gonna poke at him and give him all these amazing words of wisdom. So,
yeah, that was a great scene. I absolutely loved it.
Great scene, and just it also just goes to show Yoda's even like wisdom and humor, and the whole idea of how Luke was on his way to go burn the tree, and Yoda was like, "Oh, really? Let me just help you do that," and he just boom called on lightning, which is really cool.
That was awesome. Now, when Yoda had the lightning strike the tree and set it on fire, Luke went to go inside, and he all of a sudden paused. I was expecting either Ewan McGregor or Hayden Christensen to step out of that tree and be the Obi-Wan or Anakin Force Ghost, and for them to have a whole like family powwow that we had never seen before, something bridging the prequels through the original trilogy, through the sequel trilogy. And I'm okay that they didn't do it. I would have loved to have seen them, but I think just Yoda was enough. I think having a young Hayden talking to an old Luke might have been awkward. If they had Obi-Wan but they didn't have Anakin,
CGI,
that could have been weird too.
Dennis.
Maybe they could have done that. Actually, no, I would have preferred just Ewan McGregor. I think just Yoda was perfect.
Yeah, it was great. Like I said, the way they revealed him was just, I think it caused everybody in the audience to like sit up and be like, this is amazing. It's the equivalent to me of the Millennium Falcon reveal in The Force Awakens. You didn't see it coming, and when it came, it was like, oh yes! So I really, really, really enjoyed that whole scene.
So for me, that's pretty much the point in the movie where it takes a turn and becomes like awesome all the way through. However, we haven't really talked about Canto Bight and Finn and Rose's adventure yet. So let's talk about that real quick.
So we did see Maz Kanata, you know, give the instructions to Finn and Rose to go to Canto Bight to find the code breaker so that they can stop the tracker.
Yes, so they can stop the hyperspace tracker.
The hyperspace tracker, which looked like a flux capacitor to me.
It did!
I thought it, and I was going to say something, but yeah. Anyways, I did feel like when they threw Maz Kanata in there, it did feel a little shoehorned, like, I don't know if it was necessary. I thought Maz Kanata was going to have a much bigger role in this movie, but it was okay. It didn't bother me too much.
I definitely could have done without Maz. I don't think it was necessary. They could have found some other way to introduce that mission.
Yeah.
Now the mission itself, I thought Canto Bight was a really cool looking place. It kind of reminded me of the prequels. I thought the Fathiers, the big racing sort of fox horse things, I thought those were interesting too. But every time we went back there, I was just like, can we just get a little bit more of Luke, Rey, and Kylo? Like, that's the story I'm really interested in invested in right now. Agreed.
That is the part of the movie that was causing me to lose interest. Every time I would go back, we'd go back to this casino. First of all, the whole casino moment, it didn't feel like a Star Wars movie to me. It felt super modern, and it felt almost like, you know, like the movie, like 24, remember the Blackjack movie?
Oh yeah.
You know, and mixed in with Star Wars. It had like a cool modern version of the Cantina song in it, which I enjoyed. But at one point I was like, what's going on here? Like, this is, they even had a lot of like modern looking characters, and so it wasn't piquing my interest. And when it was switching back to that, I was like, oh, we're back at this again. And it didn't feel like it even contributed very much to the main story.
So Rey's called to this odd place, this sort of cave, this underwater cave on Octo, and she ends up approaching this sort of mirror-looking wall, and it goes through this really trippy experience where all of a sudden she's like duplicated, and she's thinking she's going to see her parents, but then she just sees herself. And it seemed to me like it was trying to be an artsy, modern update of the cave scene on Dagobah from Empire Strikes Back.
Yes.
But it didn't land for me. I don't think it was necessary at all. It didn't show us anything new. It didn't progress Rey's character, I felt like. Did you get anything out of that scene?
I thought I was going to get something out of it. I thought I was going to find out who her parents were. And so that whole progression of that scene, I was like, what's happening right now? This is kind of trippy, kind of like a Matrix movie or something like that. And then, you know, once she said, I want to know who my parents are, and you see two figures approaching in the shadows, I'm like, we're finally going to get to see it. But we didn't. You know, it just ended up being her reflection, and that's it. So it was one of those scenes that I probably could have gone without. You know, kind of like the Rogue One slug that reads your mind. Whatever.
Borgullet. So all of these plot lines then converge back at the chase between the First Order and the Resistance. The First Order is picking off all of these Resistance ships. They're down to their last big ship, the Raddus, and a couple of small transports. And Vice Admiral Holdo is sacrificing herself. ramming the supremacy via light speed. And I thought that whole sequence was cool. I actually appreciated her character more than I thought I would. What'd you think, Rob?
Agreed. Okay, so when they first showed the character of Vice Admiral Holdo, I thought I had figured out the movie, and I was like, she's going to be bad. She's going to be the reason why they're able to track them through light speed, because she's giving them away. I just had a bad feeling about her. And the movie, I think they purposely caused us to try to feel like we knew what was happening, but we had no idea, because she ended up actually being the hero at the end who saved the Resistance.
Absolutely.
So I thought that was really, really cool. I liked her character.
So then Rey gets dropped off on the Supremacy via Millennium Falcon escape pod. That was kind of cool to see. Yeah. And Finn, Rose, and DJ make their way back onto the Supremacy. So now we've got all of our core characters back in this same spot. Finn, Rose, BB-8, and DJ end up going on this mission to deactivate the hyperspace tracker, which, like Rob said, looks like a flux capacitor.
So I was not a fan of Finn's character in The Force Awakens too much. You know, to me, he was like a wuss that, I don't know, like he just was running, but he didn't know where he was running. Well, he was running from the First Order, but he just didn't really know where he wanted to land. I feel like this movie definitely redeemed Finn a lot. I feel like he was really showing that he was fighting for a cause. He was willing to give his life for that cause at one point, which had Rose not saved him, I'm kind of going forward, but had Rose not saved him, I think I would have been okay with that, because it would have shown that this guy hated where he had come from the First Order so bad that he was willing to die to try to defeat them. So I enjoyed Finn a lot better in this movie than I did in the last one. Phasma, I was really excited to see more of Phasma. I was excited to see that battle that happens between them, that fight, which it was cool. The fight was cool, but then she just died. And, you know, I thought we were going to see a little bit more of her. You know, our friend Josh said she basically is a character we could have done without, you know, from the beginning. So,
which is unfortunate. I've always liked Finn's character, but he has been a bit of a coward. And I think that this movie did a very good job of taking him from the coward who was trying to bail on the escape pod to being the hero who was willing to sacrifice his life for the greater good of the Resistance. Yeah. His fight with Phasma, I enjoyed it while it lasted. I had a feeling that her helmet was going to get cracked and we were going to see at least part of her face. I wish we would have seen a little bit more than her eye, and I also wish that she wasn't quite human. I would have liked to have seen something else under there. BB-9E, I wish he had a larger role. I thought there was going to be some sort of, you know, fun, playful rivalry or chase between BB-9E and BB-8.
Yeah.
But that's fine. He still makes for a cool Sphero toy.
Yeah.
So now the highlight of this movie for me is probably this scene where Kylo Ren brings Rey to Supreme Leader Snoke's throne room, and they have their confrontation there.
Yeah.
I was floored throughout this entire sequence. I looked back at my heart rate monitor app and I could see a spike during this sequence and then during the Luke sequence too at the end on Crate. So what did you think of this whole section where Snoke is trying to get information out of Rey and then turns to Kylo to go ahead and kill her?
Yeah. Well, one thing we were talking about even on the drive here is there were definitely some parallels with Empire, you know, with Hoth and Crate, and we see appearances of Yoda. This is a part of the movie where I saw some parallels from Return of the Jedi.
Exactly.
In the sense where we saw in Return of the Jedi, we saw Luke deliver himself to the Death Star so that Vader can take him to the Emperor. In this movie, we saw Rey deliver herself in an escape pod to the Supremacy so that Kylo can deliver her to Snoke. Even once she's there in front of Snoke, he takes her lightsaber and puts it down on his throne, exactly like it happened in Return of the Jedi.
And then he tells her that he orchestrated all of the events that led her there.
Yep.
Just like the Emperor did in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
So the big turn of the movie is Snoke finally tells Kylo, finish her, right? And it looks like Kylo's going to murder Rey. But, super big twist, he murders Snoke instead.
I loved it. I loved it. I loved it because I didn't see it coming. Like I said earlier, Snoke using that little bit of lightning and all that, and him just flipping the lightsaber and hitting Rey in the back of the head just shows how powerful he is. And so I was like, wow, we're going to see an epic battle at the end of this. I really didn't think Snoke was going to die in this movie. I thought he was at least going to maybe last for one more movie, but he died so quickly. He went from kind of a hologram in the first movie of like, oh, who is this guy? What do we know about him? To, oh, now he's here in person, dead. You know, and so it definitely caught me off guard, and I'm okay with that. There was a moment there where I was like, well, wait a second. Kylo, who she's now calling Ben and Rey are fighting together. who's the villain in this movie now? Like, is the movie over? Can it go to the ending credits? Like, what's going on? And so once that whole fight ended, I was like, okay, he has to go bad. Like, this can't. Where's the rest of the movie after this?
Kylo killing Snoke, I was an immense fan of it. So Kylo killing Snoke was totally unexpected for me, and I was a huge fan of it.
Yes.
Again, I like how it's subverting the genre. I like how we're not going to have this Snoke Emperor-like figure in the third installment in Episode 9. And then, man, that team-up battle between Rey and Kylo Ren versus the Praetorian Guards.
So good.
Spectacular. I was such a huge fan of it. From the way it started through the way it ended, was fantastic.
Yes, it was awesome, and just from that very first shot where they turned each other's backs and just started, you know, kicking butt with these Praetorian Guards was awesome. And the Praetorian Guards can kick butt. This wasn't like them fighting stormtroopers, you know, where they just go down. Like, these Praetorian Guards are good. They all were kind of defeated in their own unique ways, which was really cool. We saw some creative ways of taking people out with a lightsaber in this movie, for sure.
Absolutely. So Kylo and Rey defeat the Praetorian Guards. Kylo pulls a Vader in Empire and says, "Join me, together we'll rule the galaxy." And Rey says, "No, I'm not about that." They have a little bit of a force battle over the Skywalker saber, which breaks in half. It broke my heart.
It broke my heart, too.
Oh my gosh. And then they reveal that Rey came to before Kylo did, and she split, right? She ran off to be with the Resistance, she met up with Chewie, and they all converge back on the battle on Crate.
Which, by the way, I was getting anxious because the Resistance is, like, shrinking drastically throughout this movie. Like, it's a spoiler review, so I'm going to tell you, by the end of the movie, the Resistance can fit on the Millennium Falcon.
I know, that's crazy.
Like, that's all they have. And Leia says, we have enough. We have what we need, which is incredible. But I was getting anxious, and I was getting, like, stressed out because people kept on dying. But they get to this base, which reminded me of Hoth, but not in a bad way. This movie did not feel like Empire to me. But, you know, I really enjoyed the whole scene I really enjoyed the whole scene on Crate. The Foxes.
The Volptexes.
The Volptexes.
Oh, sorry. The Volptex. The plural was something different. I don't know. Pablo Hidalgo probably tweeted it out.
These Volptexes, or whatever, I thought they were great. They utilized them in more of a way than I thought they were going to. I thought they were just going to be creatures that are just there, but they actually provided a means of escape, which pretty much saved the Resistance, which is kind of cool. Porgs didn't save anybody. So, Team Voltex. So
the ski speeder battle, with Finn almost sacrificing himself, all of that was cool and all, but man, when Luke walked out onto that salt flat, like the cowboy that he is, and Kylo sicked all those guns on him, and he just sat there and took it, my jaw was just dropping the entire time. I was like, wow, I can't believe this is happening. This looks incredible. And then they go through the battle with Luke and Kylo, and then Luke pulls the big reveal that he is like a force projection, which was really, really neat. That's a new thing that we've never seen in Star Wars.
Yeah.
What did you think of that whole scene?
I did have a little bit of a struggle at first of like, how can Luke survive all these, you know, blasts from these ATM-6s and literally come out without a single scratch, with nothing. It was amazing what he did, though, the gesture he made when he came out. You know, it was awesome.
The one thing I would have liked different about that scene is if Luke was using his green lightsaber.
Yes,
in Return of the
we needed
Jedi.
to ignite the green.
It's a shame. I'm glad we saw it in the flashback, but as soon as I saw him walk out with it, I thought that didn't make sense. We just saw that saber get torn in half.
Yep.
So I wasn't quite understanding it, but you know, once the big reveal happened, then it all made sense. So Luke shows up on Crate. He makes a fool out of Kylo Ren, makes him even more angry than he was before, and then they reveal that he's just on that cliff on Octo, and he's a Force projection, and he looks out over another binary sunset and surrenders himself to the Force, and that's, as far as we know, the end of Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
I was so okay with it. Han's death shook me.
Yeah.
I was upset about Han's death, but something about that felt so right to me.
To me, it had a sense of completion. Him starting on Tatooine, looking at the two moons, and then him giving himself up to the Force, because he didn't technically die. You know, surrendering himself up to the Force. You know, after he's now left a new Jedi, because he did say, "I am not the last Jedi." So the Jedi continue, and so I love just seeing that kind of come full circle. It was really, really cool.
Absolutely. And that's pretty much the whole movie. Rey shows up, moves some rocks, the Resistance escapes on the Millennium Falcon, and Ryan leaves us off on a cool little shot of one of the Canto Bight stable boys, Force calling a broom to him and looking out at the galaxy, and just implying that, you know, the Jedi will never end and that the Force can flow through anybody.
Midi-chlorians.
Oh, jeez. And I also think that ties into Kylo Ren says to Rey, you're not part of this story. You're a nobody. And I think it speaks volumes that Rey is a nobody and she is part of this story, and they show this little boy and it's like he can be part of this story too. It's not about being in a particular bloodline, it's just about sort of the will of the Force and the potential and what you choose to do with it.
Yeah.
So now let's talk about a couple other little plot points, reveals, and some final thoughts.
Yeah. Okay, so Rey's parents, that whole idea of, you know, what Dave was just saying, how Kylo says you came from nothing, your parents were just, they just sold you for booze. You know, Dave believes it. I don't know that I do. You know, this movie really did a good job of making me think I knew where the direction was going, and then completely showing how wrong I was. And so I'm hoping that that's the same thing. I'm hoping that they just want us to think that, and which is why they showed the little boy, the stable boy with the broom, just showing, yeah, Rey is just a grown-up version of him. But I'm hoping that we find out, you know, maybe through a future Kenobi movie, that there's some sort of bloodline there. I would love to see her as a Kenobi. He doesn't think it's gonna happen. Another thing I really, really liked about this is Kylo Ren's character. You know, in The Force Awakens, I thought when he had his helmet on, it was super awesome. We didn't know much about him. He was, you know, kind of scary and mysterious. Once he took his helmet off in The Force Awakens, he was kind of like just a punk kid to me. That was just really whiny. Spoiled kid that just didn't like his parents. Some emo kid, basically. And so I just kind of was left with that impression. Now, man, this is a guy that he doesn't report to anyone. Snoke's dead, he's the one in charge, and he is angry, and I really, really enjoyed Kylo's character in this movie.
Absolutely. I'm so glad they got rid of Snoke. I'm so glad that the focus is going to be on Kylo in Episode 9 as the main antagonist. And again, I'm glad they subverted our tropes. Like, they subverted the genre, they subverted the story, this normal Star Wars story in that. Couple of little points. Porgs, totally fine with them. They didn't bother me. What about you?
I didn't love them or hate them. My son freaks out at them. I think they're cute. I think I might be Team Vorptex better. I'm
definitely Team Vorptex. I like those guys. I thought they were cool.
Vorbs.
Yeah, it's okay. Okay, so that's it. Thanks for sticking through this with us. It's our, like, what, 4 a.m. ramblings at this point, our first initial thoughts and reactions. This movie's going to settle in with me. I'm sure I'm going to have a lot more thoughts and feelings about it. What about you, Rob? Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, like I said, I can already tell you, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It is a very entertaining movie. I'm actually seeing it again in just a couple of hours. So, all right, guys, thanks so much for watching our review. Leave a comment below. We want to know what you thought. What parts did you like? What parts did you hate? What do you want to see in Episode 9? What do you think's coming up? We're going to do a video on that probably pretty soon, too. Yep. So absolutely, guys. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe this video. It'll really help us out. And thank you guys for watching. We'll see you in the next video. May the Force be with you.